matter of urgent public importance by Senator Danjuma Goje. Well, that motion is basically calling on the federal government to take some drastic measures against the coronavirus. But actually, there are on the other paper that will be considered. 7 will be. As usual, we have with us one of Senator Sadiq Umar. He's here to what has transpired on the floor at the moment and what we expect when the Senate will go into the other paper. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, has happened on the floor before?
As usual, orders 42 and 52, the mover for federal government drastic actions, the damage coronavirus to the world. Right now.
You are calling on federal government to take. There are certain contents of that motion. Like I know that motion is calling on federal government to take some measures, banning some countries and the rest of them. And can you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, actually, we think that right now the federal government is doing a lot, but we think it's not taking drastic actions, especially where other citizens are using Lagos connect flights to their countries, and we think there is need to block the borders to be sure that people don't, bring the problem to us here. And to do that means that there is need for a robust banning of countries where there are at least over 1,000 cases of coronavirus. But incidentally, as we are debating right now, federal government they are hearing us, the government. Including United States of America, UK, Germany, a lot of other. So, but the government has our voice.
The flip paper for the day.
Yeah, as usual, we'll have first reading, about 6 bills. We have second reading, but most importantly today is we are going to be considering the report for the ad hoc committee on Nigerian security architectural redesign because of the serious security challenges we are facing. So after the coronavirus, the next thing that is going to be of interest on the floor is going to be on the report, the reorganization of Nigerian security architecture.
So we can now address the security virus.
The security virus.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Right. Now we will take you straight to the red chamber to follow proceedings for the day.
And so want to take a mid the emits alliance Nigeria. If you be into US, one that just be allowed be for Nigeria. Nigeria, whereas as flight into China, whereas I maintain flight into, we must especially and also to recommend that the closure of all state bans has already been established, such as Lagos and Ogun. These schools be closed, like what I'm doing. But, sir, in any state where this virus has schools, this temporary, we're able to this.
Go to the prayer. Go to the prayers. Prayer 1.
say that this bill is sponsored by myself and all the senators from Southeast. Mr. President, that is to show you how pivotal this bill is to us. This bill was read for the first time in these chambers on Wednesday, 13th November 2019. The establishment of commission to tackle infrastructural deficits and as well as engage the youth in productive ventures in the zone. Mr. President, the function of the commission shall, among other things, be to formulate policies, guidelines for development of Southeast. It will also plan and implement in accordance with the set rules and regulation projects, programs for sustainable development of Southeast in the field of roads, education, health, facilities, employment, industrialization, agriculture, housing and urban development, including water supply, electricity and commerce. Mr. President, the ecological problem in Southeast is humongous. And so the challenge in Southeast, and to the extent that 30% of our farmland has gone, and we've lost nothing less than 15 villages, and we do that on a yearly basis. This bill also will attempt to identify factors inhibiting the development of Southeast and assist the member states in formulation and implementation of policies to ensure sound and efficient management of resources of our Southeast region. The Commission will estimate the cost of implementing the master plan and the scheme in general while implementing all the approved measures for development. Mr. President, this bill will be divided into 6 parts and it will have 30 sections. One schedule therewith, and it seeks, amongst other things, to have number 1, serve as a commission for development of Southeast geopolitical zone to rehabilitate and construct roads to ameliorate the devastating effect of soil erosion and other environmental or developmental challenges in the region made up of Abia, Anambra, Ebonyi, Enugu, and Imo states. It will also seek to identify and promote programs that will enhance the development of boundless entrepreneurial capacities, technical skills, technological innovativeness, managerial competencies for our economic advancements. Number 3 would be to give necessary attention and support needed to enhance the abundant economic and ingenious entrepreneurial potential of our region and to the development of the manufacturing and industrial activities capable of transforming the Nigerian economy and leading the way to a strategic domestic economic growth. Mr. President, dear colleagues, it's incontrovertible that the micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises are significant to the growth, productivity, competitiveness of any economy. This is one of the areas the Southeast manifests its strength and comparative advantage, but lack the necessary encouragement and support to enhance their growth and maximize their full potentials to compete with countries like China and Brazil. Again, diversification is paramount in taking the nation out of our monolithic economy, and Southeast is strategically positioned to play this role with the passage of this bill. The Southeast as a region has contributed immensely to the overall development of Nigeria in terms of technical, educational, tourism, sports, technological know-how, and other areas of endeavor still lag behind in terms of infrastructural development. What the region requires now from the rest of the country, Mr. President, is support and understanding, and this will help to ensure that Southeasterners have a sense of belongingness to our nation, Nigeria. The Senate is in the right position to show maturity in face of the problems that the Southeast has today and the challenges facing the geopolitical zone. Nigeria has abundant capacity to beam a sympathetic focus to begin to address these issues in a more holistic and systemic manner. The public works project to be executed by this commission will engage the youth in a more serious fashion and help to develop needed human capital in both the public and private sector. This will also curb the cases of kidnapping and other criminal activities that create security situation not conducive for growth and development. The peaceful coexistence of Nigerian states will be enhanced if the establishment of this commission is assented to. The passage of this bill will not impact negatively on other geopolitical zones, but rather support the revisitation of the need to address the issues raised by this bill, which all zones within Nigeria states have argued positively in support of. The passage of this bill will be critical in addressing Southeast agitation for marginalization through an integrative developmental plan that will promote and strengthen the sense of nationalism. A thriving and strong economy in Southeast, consequent upon the tackling of their problem, will definitely lead to improved revenue stream into the Federation account in terms of taxes and other non-oil revenue sources. The enactment of this bill will help to rebuild Southeast and provide opportunity for the people to display their talents, their innate skill, and contribute immensely to the development of the country. It may interest the Senate to know that this bill was passed by the 8th Senate as well as the concurrence of the 8th House of Representatives, but yet to be assented to. I therefore urge my colleagues to support this bill for the second reading. Mr. President, I so submit.
This bill is a progressive bill. It's a developmental bill and needs to be supported by my colleagues. Excellency, let me draw the attention of my colleagues, those who were there during the war, or those who were born during the war, or those who participated during the war from 1967 to 1970. Excellency, within this period, that was when the whole of the Southeast, which was the theater of war, experienced the degradation in terms of development. Roads were finished, abandoned, spoiled. Hospitals were non-existent. Education, every person faced the war. Nothing was happening. And that region deteriorated for a very long time. And after the war, the federal government now brought these 3 R's: reconciliation, rehabilitation, and the other one. But the rehabilitation and reconstruction went somewhere and stopped. It didn't achieve the essence the federal government had in mind because of financial constraints. Therefore, this bill, if passed, It's a bill that will capture all these things and make the Southeast to develop. Your Excellency, some parts of the Southeast belong to the NDDC, Niger Delta Development Commission. And that commission is the only commission right now that is helping the Southeast. Those that are members of that commission, helping them in terms of education, in terms of projects. So if we now pass this bill, it will be the responsibility of this commission, Southeast Development Commission, to take up this challenge, because the Southeast is laden with potentials. People who are intelligent, people who are resourceful. During the war, that region did a lot of things out of emergency. This way we are talking about a refinery that is now every person wants, how do we do refinery? There was a refinery by local people. The fuel that was used during the war were locally refined. The arms that were used were locally manufactured. Obuni way that was devastated was locally made. Why do we leave that region for this talent to die? This commission will now revive this, and it is for the progress of the whole of Nigeria. It's not for Southeast alone, and it will provide employment opportunities, widen the avenue for people to show themselves, and then put the development to the benefit of all Nigerians. Excellency, you realize also, Excellency and my colleagues, that the other development commissions have scaled through
and out of Nigeria.
Any seconder? Senator Rochas Okoro.
Chief Whip and the
Additional prayer, Minority Whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mine is of closure that urge the federal government to suspend the issuance of visa on arrival, because this is why some airlines are beginning to take the route of Nigeria to pass through to other countries that they are not accepted.
Any seconder? The DSP.
Ovi Omo Agege, Delta Central Senatorial District. I second the additional prayer as moved by the Deputy.
The whip, the DSP say aye. Those against say nay. Additional. Senator.
Thank you very much, President. The additional prayer is to urge the federal, state, and local governments, departments of public health, departments in our residents, in our city, properly monitored in our health enactments.
From this MDS, I wish to commend Senator Stella on bringing up this bill. And the essence of having a commission, a zonal commission, is to assist and unite that zone in coming up with something positive for development of that area.
So therefore, I support this bill. And I would like to say that the bill being sponsored by Stella, clearly in the Southeast, there need to be the youth that are involved in making machineries should be encouraged in that area. And for the other issue of soil erosion, the federal government budget or even budget on ecological cannot take care of the soil erosion problems in the Southeast. And when they have this commission, they can be getting assistance not only from the national budget, but from the international community to assist that particular zone. Like the Northeast is getting assistance from the international community in trying to resolve or assist and rebuild that area under the jurisdiction of the fight we had of the Boko Haram, or we have. In view of that, Mr. President, I know that every budget comes along with financial compendium, and I'm happy that she has brought the financial compendium. But I want the Senate to look at the estimate put there. I think it needs to be reviewed, even though it's just a criteria, but the budget needs to be reviewed. When you are setting up a commission, you don't put 10 million naira for training, whereby you need to train youth in that commission. So therefore, the funding of for the take of the commission is just about 158 million naira. I think it's very low. But I don't know whether on the lighter mood, the mover of the motion will be financing this on her own. But I believe that the amount is low and should be reviewed. So I support this bill and let it pass.
That Mr. President today supported this bill as the leader of the Senate when this bill was first passed in the 8th Assembly. And whatever we are saying now is what we said in the 8th Assembly. So, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, so many people have said so many things about Southeast. Looking at Southeast, we are very hardworking people, no doubt. And if this support is given to Southeast, it's going to encourage the Southeast to work harder more. And our youths, if this bill is passed, it will go a long way telling our youths that yes, the federal government and in fact the other part of the country knows that Southeast exists. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I appeal to all my colleagues to humbly, the way they did in the 8th Assembly, to support this bill. And at the same time, I'm also appealing, it's not just passing the bill. I'm also appealing that Mr. President should find a place in his heart to assent to this bill if it is passed. Mr. President, on this note, I thank you. You are a Southeast man, a lover of Southeast. Many people in these chambers are very, very friendly with the Southeast. And we have been supporting other zones in this, their pursuit of development commission. I don't see why they shouldn't support us. Anything that is good for other zones should also be good to Southeast.
Mr. President, I stand to support this bill, not just as an Igbo man, but as a Nigerian. I'm even happy that Senator Binoba has reviewed that you supported this bill in the 8th Assembly. And I also know you are going to support it in the 9th Assembly. Sir, I love this bill because the framer did not go into any history of sentiment, but went straight to say, we need this bill. And because of that, the history of the bill has already been explained or critically taken point by point. But one thing is certain in that bill. We are not saying do to us as we've done to others, but we are saying look into our heart and help us to come on board to be a state in the state of our brothers. The total perimeter of Southeast is in such a way that if we have this commission, we can bring in China, but leaving coronavirus for them. So we are saying that the state colleagues should give us their heart and ears to support this bill to pass. And I know, Mr. President, with the love you have for Southeast, when this bill is passed, you will single it out for assent. This bill should have East love, and our colleagues on the other side, and our colleagues this side. I'm only begging, Kadakahanu, Kadakahago, let us agree on this bill.
The Commission is going to assist the Southeast to develop itself in terms of ecological problems, in terms of education, roads, network, and so many other things. And like what has happened to other commissions previously passed, the Northwest, Southwest, and the Northeast Development Commission, I strongly support the establishment of this commission, because by the time we establish it, it's going to help them in a very, very big way. I therefore support it, Your Excellency.
Mr. President, let me first of all commend Senator Stella Odua for bringing forward this bill. I supported this bill in its entirety in the Senate, and I still stand by it. I'm still supporting this bill. I believe that every part of this country should be developed. We should develop everywhere so that we don't have a situation where one area is fully developed and the rest of the country are not developed. Now, if you have that kind of situation, there's a tendency that people will move to that developed area. But if you have an even development, everywhere being developed, anyone can then choose to stay wherever he or she wants to stay comfortably. So it is good we look at the peculiarities of each zone and then fashion out a way of dealing with the problem of such a zone. And when we are able to do that completely, then the country will become a better place for all of us. It is good that we give our support to this bill so that the southeastern part of this bill will be fully developed, like the southwest. And of course, well, the southwest is more developed than all other. Okay, well, Lagos. Okay, Lagos. Thank you. I do that. I should use the opportunity to thank everyone here, all the senators that supported. You all supported the Northwest Development Commission bill. So for that reason, what is good for the goose is also good for the gander. So let's all of us come together to support this bill so that we make Nigeria a better place. Mr. President, I submit.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor that this bill be now read a second time, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
A bill for an act to establish the Southeast Development Commission in the Federal Republic of Nigeria to act as a catalyst to develop the commercial potentials of the Southeast and other development challenges and for other connected matters, 2020, second reading.
A bill for an act to establish the Southeast Development Commission in the Federal Republic of Nigeria to act as a catalyst to develop the commercial potentials of the Southeast and other development challenges and for other connected matters, 2020, second reading taken, and the bill is referred to the Committee on Establishment and Public Service Matters to report back within 4 weeks. Leader of the Senate.
The next business of the day is the second reading of the much-awaited North Central Development Commission Establishment, etc. Bill 2020. Obina. Distinguished senators will recall that the bill was read the first time in this hallowed chamber on Wednesday, 27th November 2019. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Comrade before Moro Patrick Abba to move the motion for the bill to be read a second time.
Mr. President, by way of explanation, let me say that this bill is actually the brainchild of Senators Abba Moro, Id Gang, and Senator Gabriel Towa Suswam. I am only privileged to lead the debate. Mr. President, may I therefore humbly seek your leave and the leave of my colleagues to lead the debate on this very important bill. Mr. President, sir.
You may proceed, please.
The bill was read for the first time in this hallowed chamber on 19th November 2019. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the North Central Zone of Nigeria, in no particular order, comprises the following geopolitical states of the Federation, namely Kogi, Niger, Benue, Kwara, Plateau, Nasarawa, and our host, the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. Over the past years, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the North Central Zone of Nigeria has been devastated and left in the bullocks by the noxious antics of terrorists, incidents of flooding and erosion, insurgency, the header-farmer clashes, poverty, high rate of illiteracy, to mention but a few. The zone is blessed with several mineral resources that can boost the economy of Nigeria if properly harnessed. However, because of the breeding mentioned above, the North Central Zone is handicapped and cannot do much in this regard. May I mention here, Mr. President, that the North Central Zone of Nigeria hosts two of West Africa's great rivers, namely the River Niger and, of course, the great River Benue, which flows into Nigeria from the Republic of Cameroon. The two rivers meet in North Central Nigeria and flow as one river onto the Atlantic Ocean. However, Mr. President, the presence of these two rivers has made flooding a perennial challenge in the region, with increasing intensity every year, leaving not just North Central Zone, but the entire Nigeria with great losses and trauma. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, according to the statistics from the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, in 2012, devastating flooding forced 2 million Nigerians from their homes, and 2,063 died in Plateau, Benue, Niger, Nasarawa, and Kogi states. In 2016, 92,000 people were displaced, and 38 died from incidents of flood in Benue, Kogi, Niger, Nasarawa states, and other parts of Nigeria. In 2017, floods affected 250,000 people in Benue, Kogi, Niger, and Plateau states, and of course, other parts of Nigeria. Annually, Mr. President, hundreds of thousands of acres of farmland are damaged in the North Central Zone of Nigeria, where the people are largely agrarian as a result of floods, and this happens, Mr. President, whenever there is a heavy precipitation upstream on the Benue and Niger rivers. On the Benue River, the main problem is the Lagdo Dam in Cameroon, which usually causes the river to swell when water is released. Mr. President, flood has caused a lot of damage to the North Central Zone. In Agatu, Benue State, farmers continue to lose their crops and farmland to flood and erosion. This is applicable to other states like Niger, Nasarawa, and Plateau states, which have suffered losses and trauma because of floods and erosion. Mr. President, His Excellency, Mr. President, abreast of this situation in 2018, pledged a relief effort of $8.2 million to victims of flood and erosion in Nigeria. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, it is no longer news that over the years, header-farmer clashes in North Central Nigeria, especially in Benue State, have continuously made headlines. Consequently, infrastructure ranging from places of worship, roads, hospitals, schools, houses, recreational centers, etc., have been left tattered, shattered, and pierced by bullets. Women, children, especially pregnant women, and in fact the entire population is a victim of the atrocities perpetrated by suspected headers in the North Central Zone of Nigeria. Even animals and the environment are not spared. The chaos and conundrum imparted on the North Central Zone of Nigeria by the perpetrators of this unwholesome act. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, on February 24, 2016, rural dwellers in 45 villages of Agatu local government were awakened by sounds of gunshots and flicks of machetes as suspected militias swept into the area, unleashing an orgy of violence. The unfortunate incident left in its wake more than 500 persons dead, among whom were children and women, with more than 9,000 persons displaced from their ancestral homes. The displaced communities have been scattered, with many seeking refuge in various internally displaced camps scattered across Benue and Nasarawa states. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, this bill seeks, therefore, to establish the North Central Development Commission, saddled with the responsibility of receiving and managing funds allocated by the federal government and donors, both international and local donors, for the resettlement, rehabilitation, integration, construction of roads, houses, farmlands, and business premises affected by flood, erosion, and farmer header clashes. Construction of large format drainage systems, drainage or dredging of rivers Benue and Niger to control flood, erosion, and other incidental matters, as well as tackling the menace of poverty, illiteracy, and other related environmental and developmental challenges in the North Central Zone of Nigeria. Mr. President, there is a gradual paradigm shift in development efforts in Nigeria, and given the dynamics that are at play momentarily, there is an imperative need for all of us to support this bill for the establishment of the North Central Development Commission. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, we all know the bond and attachment a man has with his ancestral home and the psychological effects of being displaced from same. The funds allocated by the federal government and donors, local and international, will therefore be used to rehabilitate displaced persons and to indemnify them to their former economic status. In line, therefore, with Order 77.3 of the Senate Standing Order 2015 as amended, a compendium of the financial implications of the establishment of the Commission is hereby attached. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I humbly urge all of us in this hallowed chamber, aware of the challenges that face the North Central states of Nigeria, arising from the header farmer clashes, terrorist attacks, and of course flooding that is annual, support this bill for the establishment of the North Central Development Commission for fairness, equity, and even development of our country, Nigeria. I so submit, Mr. President.
Indeed, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I believe everybody in this chamber is a co-sponsor.
Yes.
Because they are all in the North Central.
Yes.
The North Central has continued to serve as the collection point. In every crisis in this country, the North Central has always been there with an open arm to harbor, to contain, and to accommodate all people who have left their zones to the North Central. And Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the beauty in the North Central is the fact that if you leave the North and you have to head to the South, you must pass through the North Central. The North Central transcends from Benue down to the border with the Benin Republic through Niger State. And this is how important and how huge the North Central is. And if you look at the plateau, for example, you are talking about difficult terrain. If you look at Kogi State, you are also talking about some difficult terrain. But overall, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the North Central is endowed with a lot of natural, resources. The mineral resources of this country is in the North Central zone. And the people are very resourceful, very hardworking, very straightforward, and very honest. Of course, you know the normal balance that when you want to do something so straightforward, you will say, Aishi Gwali Gwali. Yeah, distinguished senator.
This is Wali Wali.
Aishi Gwali Gwali. That is, do it straightforward. That is the beauty of this, Mr. President. And we are very accommodating and tolerant of all the situations we find ourselves. But because we are having members of other zones, the resources of the zone is being overstretched.
So we should go back.
And so for that reason, we want to continue to accommodate everybody, and that is why the North Central Development Commission will offer that ample opportunity and platform.
Deputy Chief Whip, you want the National Assembly relocated to another zone?
Your being here is by natural design. God made it so.
They were now overstretching you.
No. I said the resources are overstretched. And they are overstretched simply because you have to pass through. If you look at the road, sir, for example, we know this joke that when you are passing through and you come into where there are potholes, the blind man will say, oh, we are now in Niger State. This is simply because of the bad roads. And most of the vehicles are heading towards the north or they are heading towards the south.
So overstretching you.
So what we are saying is that this will offer an opportunity, because year on, we have come here to cry that the roads are terrible and there must be some support. And I think the idea behind the Development Commission that has sprung up has to do with the reality of the country. And that is why all the 6 zones are yearning and asking for a Development Commission, so that we can have some targeted resource allocation, targeted project implementation, which will bring in development. Just like we have just finished discussing the issue of the Northeast, and then even the Southeast, and then the other day, the Amotekun, bill, that is the North-Southwest. So, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, this is a straightforward thing. And if you look at the water resources that the, Senator Moro tried to, express what happened. All the flooding, the key flashpoint for flooding is in the North Central Zone, because that is where you have the confluence of Benue and Niger. And by the time you are seeing the flooding in Kogi, I want to bet you that those who are upstream of Kainji Dam have already finished suffering. And the same thing with those coming from, Jeba, downstream of Jeba, down up to, Lokoja. This is why it is important. And of course, by the time the Lamdo Dam is open in, the Cameroons, we also have the challenge of flooding in Benue State and, the adjoining states down to Kogi State. So, Mr. President, the development challenges are very enormous. But beyond that also, where there are good developments, it will offer us an opportunity to exploit the natural resources that is so abundant in the North Central Zone. And that is why this bill is very important. I urge my colleagues to support this bill.
Deputy Whip of the Senate has already spoken very eloquently about the need for us to have a development commission in the North Central. Mr. President, this is long overdue and the issues cannot be overemphasized, because the North Central is the bridge builder through which you pass through and traverse Nigeria from the north, the south, the west. Mr. President, he even gave examples of the bad roads in the North Central, because you come through the North Central to the southeast, you come through the North Central to the northwest and to the northeast. Mr. President, if you look at the FCT, you will find out that, just like he has said, that so many things and so many infrastructural development projects and needs for the North Central are overstretched. And as such, Mr. President, the need for this development commission to cater for the needs of this zone and ensure development of this zone. So, Mr. President, without wasting too much time and talking too much, I'd like to urge my distinguished colleagues to support this bill to go for the second reading so that we can have a sense of belonging and have a development commission that will take care of the North Central, because indeed the North Central is home to every Nigerian. With these few remarks, I'd like to thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, this bill is a developmental bill. And the North Central geopolitical region largely consists of what is historically and often preferably referred to as the Middle Belt region of Nigeria. The states of Kwara, Niger, Kogi, Benue, Nasarawa, and Plateau. This is the region that has the highest conglomerate of ethnic minorities in Nigeria. Mr. President, it is the most agriculturally viable region of this country with very clement weather. And it has massive water resources. Mr. President, this region houses the highest concentration of solid minerals in Nigeria. And this is the region, so unfortunately, that has the least presence of government, attention and presence.
Let me remind you that you have included FCT in the North Central, and if you are saying there is no presence of government, this is the seat of government. Even the president is in Abuja, so I just want to remind you about that.
The FCT is for all of Nigeria. We are housing.
Okay, the Sogu Shadi, I will ask the minority whip whether he wants to stay with North Central Development Commission or also have his own commission. If you are saying FCT is for all Nigerians, it's true. But Senator Philo Aduda, do you want to stay with North Central Development Commission? Okay, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. The challenges of the North Central have been highlighted by earlier speakers, my colleagues from the zone. And Mr. President, you will recall that as a result of the peculiar security challenges in this country, in the 8th Assembly, when the Northeast Development Commission was in the making, Kano State and Plateau State were to be included in the Northeast Development Commission, and the Senate took that decision. I was in the House of Reps then. But when it reached somewhere, the states of Kano and Plateau State were no longer in the commission then. And the advice was that the North Central geopolitical region can, in view of its own peculiar challenges, come up with its own bill. And that's why we are on the floor today, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I would say that outside of the Northeast region, no other region has been so devastated and traumatized than the North Central region. It's unfortunate that today the Northwest is equally facing what we had thought was just limited to the Northeast and North Central. And as a result of these challenges, Mr. President, the region feels neglected. There is that perception of desertion by successive governments in Nigeria. If you look at the budgets of this country and you look at interventions in critical infrastructure, if you look at these states that I've mentioned, you will see that what is happening in other regions is yet to be visited positively on the North Central geopolitical region. And that is why we are making a case very strongly for this development commission so that we can tackle and give attention to agriculture and agriculture-allied industries in this region. As I've said, it is the most agriculturally viable region of the country. So this commission will enable government and of course states of the region and the people to concentrate in the development of agriculture and allied industries. And of course the mining industry will receive special attention under this commission, in addition to the provision of critical infrastructure, particularly the need for us to have a railroad that will take off from Jos, hit Abuja, and proceed to Minna. A railroad that will link up this region. And that is going to help a lot because all the railroads in this country are from south to north. There is none that links up this central region of the country. And we are saying that is very, very important. And Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, this commission will undertake the rebuilding, reconstruction and reintegration of displaced communities that pervade almost all the states in the region. And that is why a special fund that will be managed by the commission, with the federal government being a contributor, with the states, and of course having development partners and donors that will come into it. Finally, Mr. President, a stable and peaceful North Central geopolitical region is in the best interest of this country. This commission is therefore will heal the perception, erase the perception of marginalization, and bring the presence of government to this region. We therefore urge all colleagues to all support this bill for the establishment of the North Central Geopolitical Development Commission. Thank you.
I rise to support this bill. It is very important among all the development commission that has been presented in this floor. I think this is one of the most important bill. Kogis North Central is a nerve of this nation. When we are to talk of human capital development, you meet it in North Central. Agriculture, solid mineral, and North Central people are miners of repute, and if at all we are now set as a nation to industrialize, I think the base of Nigeria's industrialization lies in North Central. Yes, and when we are to talk of economic diversification that we are all clamoring for today, we will talk of solid mineral and that of agriculture and power. Those three I mentioned lies majorly in North Central. And if that is the case, it means that this commission is well deserved. And I urge distinguished colleagues to throw our support to make sure that this bill pass through the second reading. Thank you.
Mr. President, as we discussed, I think sometimes last week, while we were discussing the Southwest Development Commission, it was stated on this chamber that the development commissions became necessary in order to fast-track the development of Nigeria in general, but in particular, to be able to identify the peculiarity and the peculiar circumstances, situations, and needs of different components or different parts of Nigeria that make the whole. And as is often said, your weakest part is your strength. It means to be able to make Nigeria as a whole strong, viable, and better developed, we have to develop the constituent part. It is in this regard that I rise to support this bill. Just like we have already discussed the other zonal commissions, the North Central Zone, as highlighted by previous speakers, has its own peculiarity in terms of development challenges. Some of them were highlighted in the late debate. Based on its location, based on its geographical location, it is endowed with water, which leads to flooding, and this destroys farmlands, it destroys livelihood and so on. And except it is addressed, the gain that ought to come from that will not come. And the national kind of development or the way we allocate resources does not address some of these challenges. In addition to that, like many parts of Nigeria also, we have high level of poverty despite the availability of natural resources. And this kind of commission now will look at how to harness these resources that are available. This has been mentioned by earlier speakers. North Central Zone has agricultural viable lands, it has water resources, it has mineral resources. And I think it does have some level of human capital. But there are parts of it, particularly the hard part, like the state where I come from, our northern part, the level of literacy there is very high. There are no roads. Where my distinguished colleague, Senator Sadiq, comes from, to be able to get to his constituency, we have to pass through your state. There is no direct road within the same state, and you have to travel like for 10 hours, and it's still the same state. This is because of lack of development. This is also happening in Niger State. That I rise to support that we need this commission to be able to harness the peculiarity of North Central, and in doing that, Nigeria will be better for it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I'm rising to support this bill, not only because I believe every geopolitical zone should be given an opportunity to further develop, but because it is important to emphasize, Mr. President, that there are two reasons why development commissions are necessary. And people seem to be soaked in one of the two reasons. And that's why when they talk about development commission in some other zones, they are a bit agitated. One of the reasons is to take care of peculiar crises as a way of trying to rehabilitate. And I think that is the situation with the Niger Delta Development Commission as well as the Northeast Development Commission. The other reason, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, why development commissions are established is to deliberately take a step to develop by having a commission that will be focused on the peculiarities of a region, that will be focused on the strengths, the economic strength of a region. And I think that is the next level of development that we need in this country. The whole essence of geopolitical zone, Mr. President, is about power sharing. It's about sharing of our resources so that there's a platform for every region to agitate. But we need to go beyond that to begin to talk about geo-economic zones in this country, which is what will bring about the real development that we are talking about. If you went to China 3 months ago and you wanted to buy building material, you'll be directed to a particular section of the country. If you ask them after buying your building materials that you wanted agriculture, farming equipment, you'll be directed to another part of the country. You might have to travel some 200 or 300 kilometers away to be able to buy those things. In other words, every part of the country, based on the kind of natural resources that exist there and the allied industries, related allied industries that will grow from such natural resources, every particular region is specializing in something. And that way, there is even development in the country. And I believe that is the next thing we have to be talking about, geo-economic zone. And that is why I support the establishment of these various development commissions. So that, the Southeast Development Commission that we just passed, we know that in the area of science and technology, or if there will ever be technological breakthrough in this country, we know where to go. We know what they are going to concentrate on. If you are talking about commerce and industry, we know, the area to concentrate. We're talking about agriculture and the agro-allied industries that will flow from that will know section of the country. So, for this reason, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I want to say that I also believe and advocate very strongly that the North Central Development Commission be supported.
I believe very strongly that we are a resourceful nation. I believe there is no state, no local government, no zone in this country that is not endowed by one natural resource or the other. So when we have these kind of requests from the Senate, it simply speaks to the need for us to expand the commercial base, this industrial base of this country. For example, I'm aware, as we speak today, there's a lot of business that's going on between Kano and Ibadan in the area of fabrics. So when we encourage the zones or the state to take advantage of the resources they have and develop it and use it to target their peculiar economic needs, we're not just doing it for that zone. I believe we are doing it for the entire country. When a section of this country is faced with security challenges, for example, we all feel the pains as patriotic Nigerians. So when a section also is developed economically, there is no way that the benefits of that development accruable to the zone will be taken by just the people of that zone alone. They will create jobs, they will create wealth, and people from other zones will also benefit from it. And besides, it will also create room for competitiveness among the states of the Federation. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I'm supporting this bill not because it's for North Central or because there was another one from Southeast, or because the other day we also debated the one from Southwest. I'm supporting it because it is good for this country. Mr. President, I still support.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to establish the North Central Development Commission in the act as a catalyst to develop the agricultural, commercial, and industrial potentials of the North Central, to receive and manage funds from allocation of the Federation for the agricultural and industrial development of the North Central and other development challenges and for other connected matters, 2020, second reading.
To establish the North Central Development Commission in the Act as a catalyst to develop the agricultural, commercial, and industrial potentials of the North Central, to receive and manage funds from allocation of the Federation for the agriculture and industrial development of the North Central and other development challenges and for other connected matters, 2020, second reading taken. And the bill is referred to the Senate Committee on Establishment and Public Service Matters to report back within 4 weeks. Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. By way of some comments, let me say that I think what we have all agreed is each geopolitical zone should have a development commission. But in my view, what Nigeria needs most will be proper planning. Because all this China example that one of our colleagues gave us is not based on commission. It's based on national planning that is followed through. Here, close to home, at the risk of saying something controversial or debatable, Lagos State is setting the pace in many aspects as a state compared to most of our states. They have been able to, through a well-grounded blueprint, they are making progress faster than I think most of the states. I think we need to emphasize our national planning more, because this is the only way we can address all the development challenges in different parts of the country. We have some advantages in some areas, and of course some states or geopolitical zones have comparative advantage in some areas, and these are where we are supposed to focus for the development of the country through investments in those areas that we find in some of the geopolitical zones. I think every geopolitical zone has something to contribute. But you see, when we are just looking at the commissions, one of our colleagues in his contribution said the North Central is so marginalized. There is no federal presence. And this is where the president of the country is a resident. And all of us are here, so I can't see marginalization here. Definitely what we need is to work to ensure that we exploit and utilize the potentials of the North Central, and there are a lot of potentials everywhere in all the parts of the country. So with this, I think the Senate should continue to focus on national planning. We have a chairman, our chairman, National Planning Committee, himself is almost a professor of this, and I believe that we should be working with the executive arm of government. We should insist that national planning should be resuscitated, because it appears like we do our budgets for 12 calendar months, and then the next year we do the same, each in isolation, each in a silo of its own, and that's not helping us. So I believe that in addition to having commissions, we need to have proper national planning. That could be long term.
Among the constitutional amendment bills that passed second reading include the bills that seek to provide for the establishment of state police and to replace the name Nigerian Police Force with Nigerian Police, and the one that seeks to reduce unlawful exclusion of a political party logo on ballot paper to a pre-election matter.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to alter the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 to provide for the establishment of state police to ensure effective community policing in Nigeria and for matters connected thereto, 2020, second reading.
A bill for an act to alter the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 to provide for the establishment of state police and to ensure effective community policing in Nigeria and for matters connected thereto, 2020, second reading taken, and the bill is referred to the Committee on Constitutional Review. Clerk of the Senate.
A bill for an act to alter the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 to provide for the establishment of state police and other related matters, 2020, second reading.
A bill for an act to alter the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 to provide for the establishment of state police and other related matters, 2020, second reading taken, and the bill is referred to the Senate Committee on Constitutional Review.
A bill for an act to alter the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 to replace the name Nigerian Police Force with Nigerian Police to reflect their core mandate of providing civil services and for related matters, 2020, second reading.
A bill for an act to alter the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 to replace the name Nigeria Police Force with Nigerian Police to reflect their core mandate of providing civil services and for related matters, 2020, second reading taken, and the bill is referred to the Committee on Constitutional Review.
The bill for an act to alter the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 to amend Section 138D and Section 139 of the Electoral Act 2010 by deleting Section 138D and adding a new subsection 3 to Section 139 to reduce the unlawful exclusion of a political party logo on a ballot paper to a pre-election matter and for related matters, 2020, second reading.
Alter the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 to amend Section 138, subsection D, and Section 139 of the Electoral Act 2010 by deleting Section 138, subsection D, and adding a new subsection 3 to Section 139 to reduce the unlawful exclusion of a political party logo on a ballot paper to a pre-election matter, and for related matters 2020 second reading taken, and the bill is referred to the Senate Committee on Constitutional Review.
Is the second reading of the FCT Customary Court Act 2007 Amendment Bill 2020. Distinguished senators will recall that the bill was read the first time in this chamber on Thursday, 27 February 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Michael Opeyemi Bamidele to move the motion for the bill to be read the second time.
Senator Michael Bamidele Opeyemi.
Hereinafter, Mr. President, if this bill is passed, offenses that attract maximum prison term of 7 years or maximum fine of 500,000 naira or both will now be tried by the FCT customary courts without prejudice to the jurisdiction of magistrate courts in the FCT. In conclusion, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, this bill is not in conflict with the Constitution or any extant act of the National Assembly, and if passed, will impact positively on criminal justice administration in the Federal Capital Territory. Mr. President, I wish to emphasize that the reason this bill is coming is that other state houses of assembly having done similar things, the National Assembly being and the assembly that is occupying the status of State House of Assembly to FCT. That is exactly the reason why I brought this bill before the Senate. I wish to therefore, Mr. President, appeal for the support of Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues for the passage of this bill. In compliance with the requirements of Order 77 sub 3 of the Senate Standing Orders 2015 as amended, I wish to state that this bill has no additional burden on the treasury of the federal government if passed into law. I thank you, Mr. President, and my colleagues for your kind attention.
When you talk about the customary court, my understanding is that it's a court that is going to look at issues that borders on the customs, tradition, norms, morals, and the like of the people within the context of their jurisdiction. And if you look at the examples given, for example, of wanting to bring it at par to what obtains in other states, most of the states of the Federation have peculiar customs, traditions, and the like. But in the FCT, it's an agglomeration, a collection of all Nigerians in one place. And so I'm wondering, if you saddle one person with the responsibility of adjudicating, will there be justice? Will there be fairness? So that's my only concern. I don't know how maybe the mover of the motion can allay these concerns, because I felt the idea behind putting one or two people within the context of the customary courts, for example, is different from the regular courts where you have very trained professionals. And the people in the customary courts have their own, leaning, and their jurisdiction, like I said, is within the context of the customs, traditions, and the like. So I wouldn't know if within the context of the FCT, where every Nigerian from all the other states, when you come in here, this is your home. So this is my only concern. But otherwise, I've seen the merit in the intendment in terms of maybe perhaps, trying to expand the clog or remove the delays that happens. The other aspect might be, is it not apt perhaps to increase the number of people who will be sitting in the court so that we don't have the delays in terms of the number of people who should form the quorum? So these are my only major concerns, Mr. President.
Usually, customary courts, those that are appointed to head customary courts, sometimes don't have legal training. They just appoint them on the basis that they are upstanding members of society and so forth. Well,
I do not know whether the mover of this bill also made provisions that only whether provisions have been made to make sure that legally trained individuals are appointed as customary court judges. If not, then expanding the frontiers of criminal justice system to put it in the hands of those who may not understand the nuances of criminal law and jurisdiction may actually lead to misapplication in some way. Secondly, the essence of making it 3 persons at once is to have at least more than 2 persons conferring and being able to come to a conclusion that will be in the best interest of whoever is in front of them in the dock. Now, reducing it to 1 person, and that person may also not be, I understand the essence of what is being proposed in this bill, which is to help the magistracy and the high courts to reduce the backlog that they have. But I think that there are several other ways you can also use to reduce backlog. You can appoint more magistrates, you can also find some other ways that may not necessarily have to go through this point. So I suggest that this bill, we may need to take another look at it and make sure that all these areas are looked into before we go ahead to pass it.
I agree with the sponsor of this bill that here we also do things for the FCT as if we are a house of assembly for the FCT. And therefore everything that concerns the FCT, including this one, we are in a position to legislate for them. And therefore that is understandable. But looking at the bill as it is an amendment bill and is anchored on 2 things. And the purpose to achieve the target is the same. 1, according to the bill, is to include criminal jurisdiction for customary courts because of the number of cases that are before the courts for quick dispensation of justice. The other one, according to this bill, is to reduce the number of judges of the customary court from 3 to 1, because according to this bill, and the reason behind it is that more often than not, you see customary courts not have forming quorum to sit, because 3 members, you need 2 persons to form a quorum to sit. I think that the entire thing is anchored, this bill is anchored on that, for quick dispensation of justice. Those who spoke before me have spoken very well. And I am tempted, Mr. President, my highly respected colleagues, I'm seriously tempted to agree with them. The sponsor of this bill is my chairman of the Committee on Judiciary. Well, they have raised some fundamental issues, and those issues are very important, because if you are expanding the scope for them to have criminal, to adjudicate on criminal matters, then who are they? Are they lawyers? Because they are appointed to adjudicate on customary matters. And the appointment of the qualification for the appointment of somebody to become a judge of the customary court must also be amended if this bill must pass through, so that you have only those who are versed with law, who are trained and called to the Nigerian bar, and with a number of years spent at the bar. Those are the only persons that can sit on criminal matters.
Justice delayed is justice denied. And for me, I think that the quorum, we discussed with the chairman of the committee and the sponsor of the bill, and I agreed with him that yes, that perhaps we should have a situation whereby if the three judges are not sitting together, one can sit and dispense justice and customary issues. But truly, for the dispensation of criminal matters, I think that because sometimes when you appoint these customary court judges, they are not likely to be lawyers. They are people who are upright and upstanding in the society. So if you are not careful, sometimes even some leaders, religious leaders and all that, you pick from the best of the best to put together so that they can look at the core values of the environment, society and all that, and advise appropriately through customary issues. But to dispense criminal issues is what I'm worried about, and I think that maybe with further legislative work on the bill and further issues and discussions, I think that we should be able to look at this bill. This is my...
There is need to have a second opinion so that at least a good decision can be reached. And particularly because we are now saying, without prejudice to the jurisdiction of the magistrate, you can also take that decision. I think this is a little bit difficult because we have now expanded the jurisdiction. We have expanded the whole issues. We are saying that all those that can be sentenced to about 7 years or fined 500,000 can be brought to be tried by one person in this customary court. So I think there is need to review this issue. Not to say that we should throw it away, but there is need for further work by the chairman on this bill. Because even if like the other colleagues say, we should go ahead and pass it. If we know that there is something wrong with the fundamentals of this bill, there is need to step down this bill and work on it again and again, and then we try to see what we can do on it. I think that is my suggestion.
When I read through this, listening carefully to the learned colleague, distinguished chairman of judiciary, what came to my mind was one, why are we reducing from 3 to 1 and at the same time expanding jurisdiction? And I think I got the answer from the first speaker that it was 3 initially because FCT is a peculiar location in Nigeria. It's an amalgam of Nigerians, in which case customary issues that will go before such court is different from what will be in many states. The 2 states cited, so to say, have Lagos may be cosmopolitan, but majority of people living in Lagos, probably the culture and the custom maybe of the Yorubas and so on, and that's probably why. 2, it's also the issue of the fact that in many customary courts all over the country, the people sitting there are not necessarily lawyers. So my view, sir, we cannot at this stage reduce number and increase jurisdictions without looking at the qualification. The other one is that I also strongly believe that increasing the jurisdiction for criminal matters, 7 years, a warrant, these sentences are quite grievous, and without looking at the qualifications carefully, we may be setting a bad precedent. Therefore, Mr. President, I want to support the earlier speaker that the bill may need to be looked into much more carefully. We can achieve what we want to achieve through several other means, and we may have to think through. One, we can achieve by increasing the number of magistrates or federal or judges of the High Court that handle similar issues, and the customary issue will either still remain as they are to handle customary matters. But on the other hand, if we want to expand that, it means we have to look at qualification of the customary court, and the minimum, in my suggestion, would be at least one of the judges must be a lawyer, have certain number of years of practice and experience, while the other two may be just to have customer experiences, so that we are retaining 3, but we are including 1. These are some of the options. So in view of this, I'm tempted to say that the bill needs some reworking and be resubmitted to us. Thank you, Mr. President.
The whole idea of a public hearing is to give opportunity to people who are not privileged to be in this chamber to voice their opinion. Now, serious issues have been raised, which are very fundamental. So I want to strongly suggest that we ask him to step it down and do more work on it. Thank you, Mr. President.
I think something as serious as this would definitely be interesting to our committee on judiciary, but probably even more interesting to people outside there, the legal practitioners. I am not advocating for anything, but I think giving an opportunity for our committee members to engage with the public, especially the learned people outside, including the judiciary, we may be enriching this debate and probably could have more information and education to take a more informed decision. Let me put the question now. Those in favor that this bill be now read a second time, say aye. Aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to amend the Federal Capital Territory Customary Court Act 2007 to alter the quorum of the court for the purpose of ensuring timely dispensation of justice, expand the jurisdiction of the court to include the trial of common criminal matters and for related matters 2020, second.
Federal Capital Territory Customary Court Act 2007 to alter the quorum of the court for the purpose of ensuring timely dispensation of justice, expand the jurisdiction of the court to include the trial of common criminal matters and for related matters 2020, second reading taken. And the bill is referred to the Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters to report back within 4 weeks.
When we have love, we'll be able to unite, irrespective of tribe, religion, and culture. So we keep preaching on love. That is the only binding force. Let us love ourselves.
You are about to witness the commencement of the most stimulating and compelling contest on television. This contest is only for the strong, the intelligent, and the talented. Get ready for the Unity Challenge reality TV show.